Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. Today, we are going to be talking about how the truth always comes out. They can keep lying, and then get away with it for a while, and even sadly get things that they want politically for a while. We saw that obviously with the 2020 election and how people rely on President Trump and stuff, but they can't always get away with everything. So we've seen how in Loudoun County they have tried to cover up a sexual assault. Superintendent flat out lied about it. And a memo or an email has come out where it was obvious that they knew about it at the time. When he was asked at a meeting, were they aware of any sexual assaults? And they still pushed through their transgender policies. They, are referring to these parents as domestic terrorists. Merrick Garland is acting on the behalf of the National School Board Association, just on their behest, no data, no knowledge, etc. So the truth about that has come out. Gain of function research. Fauci lied about that time and time again, and Rand Paul is justified. There was some information that came out where they admitted that the organization admitted that it happened, and I saw Rand Paul tweeted at it. He's like, sorry, or doesn't even. He said, I told you so. Doesn't even begin to say it. So he was the one really going after and talking about it, and so we Rand Paul was right. And a lot of these Democrats are seeing the repercussions of these lies catching up to people. The cover up, it's definitely affecting the race in Virginia for governor, where Democrats should be able to win it easy peasy. Hillary Clinton won it easy peasy. Biden won it, easy peasy. But now they're in a like dead heat with a Republican candidate and a well-known Democrat there. And they should be pretty standard Republican, pretty standard Democrat, but the suburbs are activated. And when you get the suburbs activated, that's when you can really do stuff. One reason why people really attack Trump in such a way to frame him like a racist and so on was to guilt the suburban white women out of their vote. And when I talked about that, like he's in trouble with some of the suburban vote and stuff, there'd always be like Trumpers who were suburban white women like, well, I'm still team Trump. I'm like, okay, but your neighbors are floundering. Okay. That's just data. I've seen the data locally. I know the RNC's seen it. Like the data is real, but they know if you can start to guilt them, they can even start to support bad policies that aren't even going to necessarily help their families. If you can guilt them enough. And that's what we saw in 2018, 2020. So now the parents are activated because they see all of the vicious things that people are trying to force in the schools, like critical race theory. We see what they're trying to do with the trans bathroom issues. And Terry McAuliffe even said he was asked about bathroom policies and stuff, and he said, that happens, not bathroom policies, I'm sorry, students who are in sports together and girls competing with boys, biological boys who identify as girls. And his answer is basically, that's so rare. What does it matter? We should be lifting up these students. They have a hard enough time. It's like, what does it matter if it's rare, if it's a boy beating out your girl in a girl scholarship, and this is the way that she was going to get to college, and someone came in and took it and is now beating all these other girls, and now they're the top time holder. What does it matter if it happens rarely, if it's your kid getting shafted? So these people are very special, very, 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 very special. But I'm glad that people are waking up. We will see how the Virginia race turns out. But they are definitely trying to pull out all the stops to save Virginia. But before we jump into everything, I do want to encourage everyone to go to blacktnews.com, check out the different content that I have. If you would like to support blacktnews.com, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. I appreciate everyone who watches, everyone who subscribes, everyone who shares, tells someone about the show. You can, link to people. You can share to people. All my handles are at Black T News on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. The only one that's different is Twitter, and that's at True Black Tea. So make sure that you share. Make sure that you share different articles. Please check out different merchandise that I have on the store. We got great stuff on the store. I had my goat hoodie on yesterday. It's so comfortable, but you don't have to get in the hoodie. But I do have different things that I'm sure that you guys will like. Got different mugs. You are not that special, man. I love that mug. I love that mug so much. But we got pumpkin spice season stuff. So you guys can check out all the stuff that we have at the store and give it as gifts. You better, if you want to get something for Christmas for someone, you better go ahead and get it now before that supply chain really gets you. I know Jen Psaki's not worried about it because she's kind of mocking the people. They said, well, there's vacuums and so on. People can't get them. She's like, oh, the case of the vacuum. It's like, people make those vacuums. They sell those vacuums. People sell them, buy them. It's a whole process. So you can totally not be sympathetic about people's livelihoods and people's goods, but it's still a problem regardless, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you mock it or not, Jen. So anyway, get your stuff now. And I do want to thank the Brighter Michigan PAC for being a sponsor and us being able to do the show in the studio. I appreciate being able to do the show in the studio. If you don't like what I'm saying today, nobody cares. It doesn't work like that. Can't fire me. No one cares if you're triggered, but I do appreciate them allowing me to use the space. So let's jump right into my news of the day. You guys know I like to start with something funny, and it's a classic political cartoon going trick-or-treating, and they said, no, we're going to the school board meeting. And of course, you see Freddie, Jason, Tome Dude from Scream, the clown, which my sister was pretty much terrified of all these guys. And Jason, she used to have in Chainsaw Texas Massacre, I guess it's the last guy. My sister Katrina used to have like nightmares all the time about Freddie and Jason, to the point where I think she made a pact with them, not like a, I don't know, sell your soul to hell kind of pact, but just like, don't kill me anymore sort of thing. I don't know how many years she had to have these nightmares, but she is still afraid of the clown, just to be frank with you. If a red balloon just floats in her building while she's alone at night, that would probably scare her half to death. As a matter of fact, I know a coworker of hers watches Black Teen News. So if you're ever inspired to just leave a red balloon, and just have it float by her desk, that would be great. And tell me about it. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. But anyway, they're acting like these parents are such a threat at the school board meetings. And of course, that's crazy. So we've talked about this on the show, that the National School Board Association sent out a letter likening parents to terrorists. And you might be saying, oh, that's an exaggeration. Not really. So the implication was that there's an increase of threats and so on against school board members. So they wrote a letter to the DOJ asking for help, and not just like normal help. First of all, if all these things are true and they have credible threats and stuff, no one should be doing that, of course. But that would be something that the local authorities would handle, going to the DOJ and requesting that the FBI look into it. That's just not how that chain of command is supposed to work at all. And it really seemed more like a intimidation tactic, not just an intimidation tactic. Maybe that's really taking things too lightly. Of course, it was meant to intimidate, but I think they know that Biden will weaponize these departments. So they reach out because they know that they will do the dirty work and maybe leapfrog over local authorities who would handle those problems and those issues. So in the letter, they did reference certain things, and one of the things that they referenced was a father they referenced an incident, but that incident was a father who was arrested at a school board meeting in Loudoun County. And at this school board meeting, he said he wasn't there to argue like the trans stuff and all that. He's like, people talk about a lot of things. He's like, I was there because his daughter was sexually assaulted in a bathroom, and he wanted to know what was going on in regards to that. So there are people there. It was hostile sort of environment. He got triggered. He got kind of, there was an altercation, and he ended up getting like on the ground, his belly hanging out, and he's just kind of plastered all over. And he's basically the face of domestic terrorism when it came to the parents. And he got referenced in this letter. So he was there because his daughter was sexually assaulted. He wasn't there to fight school board members, which a parent that he did. I'm not going to say that's not that far-fetched, but his outrage was understandable. So they came back and lied. The school board meeting where this happened was in June. His daughter was assaulted at the end of May. And the superintendent was asked at one point, do sexual assaults happen in the bathroom? Or and they said no, they're not aware of it. And that wasn't true. An email came out that the superintendent sent it around to people, let them know that there was an incident. So it was a flat out lie. And the sheriff at one point said the people were lying, and I don't see how they or they say they didn't know, but there's no way they couldn't have known particular things. So first for things first, the Merrick Garland, who was painted as some kind of moderate, super fair guy, the liberals kept whining and whining because he should have been the Supreme Court justice, and Gorsuch took his seat, and he was just a paragon of virtue. Turns out he's a hack. He's a hack, and I thought he was a hack when he had his confirmation hearing, and there were certain questions that he wouldn't answer, and if there were certain things he wouldn't answer, I didn't think that he should have gotten nominated. But at the end of the day, these people are pansies, and they should have been difficult with basically every person that Biden put up. Now Biden he's the president, he should have a cabinet or whatever, but some of those people should not have gotten through. Just should not have gotten through at all. So Republicans really should have buckled down, and if Democrats had to just vote on straight party lines, and then Kamala Harris broke the tie, then that's just what needed to happen. Merrick Garland is a hack. He's a hack. And so we had him the other day at Capitol, and I mentioned this yesterday, but he was asked about this letter because he sent a response letter. And it turns out that he didn't have really any data to follow the claims about the threat that these parents posed or these teachers were under. He's just going off their National School Board Association letter.
First sentence of your memo, very first sentence, you said, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, threats of violence.
Yes.
When did you first review the data showing this so-called disturbing uptick?
So I read the letter, and we have been seeing over time threats.
Whoa. I didn't ask you. So you read the letter. That's your source?
So let me be clear. This is not a prosecution or an investigation.
Is there some study, some effort, some investigation someone did that said there's been a disturbing uptick, or you just take the words of the National School Board Association?
Well, the National School Board Association, which represents thousands of school boards and school board members, says that there are these kind of threats. When we read in the newspapers reports of threats of violence, when that is in the context of threats of violence.
The source for this, for the very first line in your memo.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Was the School Board Association letter.
Expired, Mr. Deutsch.
Man, Nadler was tyrannical yesterday. They wanted to play a video, and they're like, you can't play the video, and they're like, what do you mean? They're like, it's against the rules. Like, no, it's not. He's like, it's a procedure, but it's not in the rules. Like, there's a 48-hour rule. Like, no, there's you're not going to let us play a video of parents at school board meetings. Like, what do you be afraid of? So they censored them. It was live on TV, by the way. So Nadler he's a mean little elf, man. But that's incredible. Jamal, the head of the DOJ, the Attorney General, which I'm not surprised that the Biden administration is weaponizing the departments, because that happened under Obama happened under Obama. So it's not really hard to believe, but so many people were convinced that Obama nominated this great paragon of virtue who was obviously he's going to be a liberal judge, but he's going to be so fair, he's going to be moderate, he's going to, there's nothing to be concerned about. And here he is participating in the intimidation of teachers because the school board association said jump. And again, I don't think it's just a matter of they want to intimidate parents. I think it's a matter of they knew, even though this would be a local issue, if people are actually making threats and so on, they know that they can get the Biden administration to do their bidding. This is so political. Now, if people are actually doing the things that they're saying, there's credible threats and so on. I want the authorities to deal with that. But we know the sort of faces that they had that they claim were these domestic terrorists. So here's a little bit of the sheriff talking about the local situation a little bit going on with the sexual assault and the father and so on in Loudoun County.
A first sexual assault allegedly took place back in May at one high school inside a bathroom. A boy wearing a dress allegedly committed that assault, and we know that the boy has been charged with that assault by the Loudoun County Sheriff's Department, but we also know that he's been charged with that separate assault just a couple of weeks ago at a separate Loudoun County high school. That incident took place in a classroom, and the sheriff says that there is no reason that this individual should have even been back in the school in the first place once it all became clear what was going on in July.
Since you put him back in detention.
So the arrest took place on July the 8th. Okay, that's when the subject was arrested in this. And so at that point, it's the responsibility, and it's in law, it's a matter of law, it's the responsibility of juvenile intake to notify the school superintendent of what was going on. So his claim that he did not know, I don't know how that could be possible, because it's the responsibility of the juvenile intake to do that.
So as you can hear from Sheriff Chapman there, he says that Loudoun County Schools should have known that this individual had been charged before they could place him back into a school, which they did, and that he later committed that alleged assault. But in terms of Scott Smith, the father of the first alleged victim in this case, he was arrested at a school board meeting back in June, and the record was clarified by the sheriff. He said he wanted to get out the accurate version of the story. Take a listen.
As we know, the arrest or the incident that involved the assault on Scott Smith's daughter occurred on May 28th at the high school, okay? That was reported to one of our school resource officers, and within 13 minutes, that school resource officer had contacted somebody from CID, from our investigation division, to follow up on this particular case. After that occurred, there was communication between our school resource officer and the school, and that's when Scott Smith was called. And he got there and was obviously very upset with what was going on, and there was some concern that things might escalate there, and that's where some deputies were called to assist to de-escalate the situation. And 2 showed up. There was not a SWAT team that showed up. 2 showed up. So that investigation took place, and it wasn't until July 8th in which there was enough evidence that we were able to uncover to determine exactly what happened, and that's when we charged the defendant in this particular case.
And Scott Smith, he's been on Newsmax multiple times. He's demanding accountability from administrators in Loudoun County. We know that school board member Beth Bartz announced her resignation effective November 2nd. But Scott Ziegler, the superintendent, parents still want him to step down. And as you just heard from Sheriff Chapman, John, he says that Ziegler and the rest of the administrators should have known about this transgender student who allegedly committed that first assault back in May, in July, and that means there were 3 months where nothing was done about it. He was placed in a different school. At first,
so yeah, it's a terrible story. I can't imagine being a parent. Something that terrible happens to your child. You are arrested. The left-wing prosecutor tries to come after you personally. Even though they're like soft on crime, but they can't be soft on you because their ideology is more important than any sort of consistency that they have, right? So they go after him, try to prosecute him for disorderly conduct or whatever, and he's just a dad trying to protect his kid, and no one would listen to him, and he went to Daily Wire, and Daily Wire investigated, and so now we have this story that's a big story that could really help shape the outcome of this governor's race in Virginia. So really, really big kudos to Daily Wire for putting this story in the forefront and empowering these people with this knowledge. It's a tragedy what happened, but there does need to be some accountability. And I saw someone ask the question as they were sharing the story about the superintendent who had clearly lied about whether there have been sexual assaults and stuff. And it was like, how do you know things like this are not happening in your child's school? How do you know they're not? And that's a pretty I was going to say sobering, but that's a terrifying thought. It's a super terrifying thought. And I think that's one of the reasons why you can't protect your kid from everything, but there's a lot I want to protect my kid from when it comes to like going to like public schools and stuff. Everybody's got to make their own decision. Everyone's got to make their own decision. Someone said they hope he gets to sue them. I hope so too. I hope he can sue everyone that he possibly can. And it's good that someone resigned from the school board, but we need the superintendent to resign. So here's the superintendent lying about the sexual assault.
And I'm not sure who can answer this. Do we have assaults in our bathrooms or our locker rooms regularly? I would hope not, but I would like clarification.
To my knowledge, we don't have any records of assaults occurring in our restrooms.
Okay, so.
To his knowledge, none. And that's really going a huge leap forward too, because she's like, the question was first kind of posed like, it's not a regular thing that happens. He's like, well, there's none that I know about, which isn't true. So WTOP News, they were alerted that there was an email that the superintendent of Loudoun County Public Schools sent out a brief confidential email to the school board members on May 28th. Mind you, the school board meeting was in June. The same day, a female student at Stonebridge High School said she was sexually assaulted in a bathroom. In the email provided to WTOP by the school system, Superintendent Scott Ziegler alerted this board that the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office was investigating the incident, but provided few details. The school board is often notified of major incidents at school, but rarely given the specifics or told about who is involved because the board may be involved in student disciplinary actions. So the purpose of the email is to provide you with information regarding an incident that occurred at Stonebridge High School. This afternoon, a female student alleged that a male student sexually assaulted her in the restroom. The LCSO is investigating the matter. So that's the email. That's the email. So obviously he knew, and obviously they lied about it. And he ended up apologizing. He made a statement on October 15th saying, first, let me say to the families and students involved, my heart aches for you. I am sorry that we failed to provide a safe, welcoming, and affirming environment that we aspire to provide. We acknowledge and share your pain, and we will continue to offer support to help your families through this trauma. Since then, the May 28th victim's family has said they intend to file civil lawsuit against the school system, as they should, as they absolutely should. And he did apologize for his statement that he made saying that there weren't sexual assaults because he admitted that it was misleading. No, duh, of course it was misleading. But he said that he thought they meant... I don't know that in last week's statement, Ziegler also explained why he answered no to a school board member's question about whether he was aware of the sexual assaults in school bathrooms. Ziegler said he wrongly interpreted the question as incidents involving transgender and gender fluid students, since questions a moment earlier had been about the country's transgender policy. And it was a pretty straightforward question. It was a pretty straightforward question. And what his assumption is that it didn't involve a transgender gender fluid student because the person who did it, the boy who did it, likes to wear skirts from time to time. So he may be genuinely gender fluid, or he may be genuinely taking advantage of the situation. So the fact that they're willing to cover all this up, to keep it quiet, and Youngkin, who's running as a Republican nominee for governor, he said it's a cover up. If you're willing to cover up these heinous things in order to protect the protected class and the LGBT, you're going to have more predators, whether they're in the LGBT or not in the LGBT, who are going to take advantage of it. You're just creating more victims. You're just creating more victims. So he needs to resign. He must resign. Parents need to continue to be up in arms about it. They need to sue. People need to pull their kids out of school systems too. But they need to hold these people accountable. They cannot allow this man to continue being the superintendent. I cannot believe they did not. The rest of the school board didn't offer this man's head on a spike or something, and just tell him to fall on his sword at least. So we'll see if that happens. Hopefully they keep putting pressure on it, and that ends up being the case. But that is crazy. They all need to resign. Absolutely, all of them need to resign on this. It's just insane that this would happen. And again, how do you know it's not happening in your child's school? I'm gonna play something that Megyn Kelly. She has a I'm sure you guys know who Megyn Kelly is. Megyn Kelly, who used to be on Fox and did her own thing, and then they didn't like her, so they got rid of her over a controversy that they wouldn't have allowed leftists to die over. So anyway, she's been doing her own podcast since then, and she said that the schools were teaching her kids some really bizarre things. So I'm going to go ahead and play the audio of it.
Logical phase that kids go through.
Yes.
They want to fit in, and if they feel it's going to please an adult, they may even pick a pronoun so that
Yes.
that adult applauds them and gives them
they are
pin, which is
ideological
Sorry.
predators. No, what you said is, are you kidding me? I loved every word because I've lived it, and it's so cathartic to hear somebody else give voice to it too. You're not alone. You sometimes feel like you're nuts, but I'll tell you a story. I've never revealed this before, Ramona. I've never talked about this, but at our school, which again was one of the top all boys schools one of the top schools in the country. And we chose it because it was more traditional. It wasn't this far left place. It is now. On our third grade boys. Okay. So they unleashed a 3-week experimental transgender education program on our boys. But that I've revealed. But what I didn't reveal yet is this. The way we found out about it was we went to parent teacher night. And we're sitting there, and one of our fellow parents, a man, raised his hand and said, "Why did my son come home?" These are third graders, 8 and 9-year-olds. "Why did my son come home and ask if it's true that he can take a pill to prevent puberty, and then when he turns 18 can have his penis chopped off if he wants to become a woman?" We were all like, "What? Say what?" And we know this guy, we know his son, and the teacher, it was the science teacher who was standing up there. She was 9 months pregnant at the time. So we were gentle with her. But trust me, we were angry. And the teacher acknowledged it. She didn't deny it. She said, because we take the conversation where the boys want to take it. And of course, we were like, that's bull. No 8-year-old was asking that question. And even if they were, are you telling me that if my son comes in here and says, "Hey, my mom's pregnant with another baby. I don't know that my parents want another baby. What are their options?" Are you going to get into that? Or what if a teen in today's society says, "I'm really depressed and I'm wondering what the many ways are one can commit suicide"? There are things that are inappropriate to discuss with children, certainly third graders, as it was in our case, and teenagers down the line for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. Isn't that bananas? Isn't that crazy? The teacher said, we take the conversation where the students want to go. By the way, that's how some teachers, even if they've banned critical race theory from schools and stuff, how some leftist teachers are still trying to get around with it, because they'll kind of go the students in asking particular questions and try to frame their curriculum around their curiosity after they've kind of inserted the mental things in their head. So yeah, I'm with Megan. Like the 8-year-olds probably didn't say, "Hey, I can take a puberty pill and then chop off my penis." And that's crazy that they're talking about that on an all boys school. And then the teacher defended it. And then they had this big, like, what she said, did she say 3 days, whether it's 3 weeks or 3 days? That's crazy. Like symposium on gender or something. But I've talked about this on the show. My friend who's running for Secretary of State in Michigan, she was on like a school board sexual education thing for Detroit when they're trying to decide how they're going to do the curriculum as far as like sexual education, and she had to fight back with these people all the time on the severe push for like gender ideology. And as Megan said, these people are predators as far as the ideology and how they push it. Not too long ago, at the very end of Pride Month, there was a gay man's choir who got into some hot water because they literally wrote a song talking about "we're coming for your children." And like, oh no, it's a joke. It's like, that wasn't a joke, man. And that's not something you joke about. Just out the blue like that. So I don't know what I would do as a parent. Oh gosh. I would be like chained to that school or something. It'd be like Samson and Delilah at the end. He's like pushing down the columns or something. Oh my gosh. If I found out some of the crazy stuff they were doing to these kids was done to my kid, I don't have any right now. And I do want some. And I do at least think about my nieces and my nephew and my soon-to-be nephew is on the way. I'm glad their mom right now is like taking their education into her own hands. It is still like a public school, but it's like online. So she's still like doing it with them and watching it and so on. So she can see what they're teaching, and an online education has really like opened the gateway to see how our kids have been taught in a way that maybe was really more closed off. So at least that's one good thing, I guess, about the pandemic. But you got to protect your kids at all costs. You got to protect your kids at all costs. Let's move on about the gain of function research. So we know that Fauci said that they didn't fund gain of function research. Fauci is like the Lord and Savior to a lot of these people. Actually, that's a trend on TikTok where I've seen several videos. It'll, in the captions will say, when liberals watch Dr. Fauci on TV, and I'll have music playing, "Our God is an awesome God, he reigns." It's kind of it's a funny trend. I don't want to approach that. It's a little too sacrilegious for me. Even though I get the joke, and maybe it's not that deep, but I just wouldn't jump on the trend myself. But it's a little funny. But people take his word, even though he's lied after thing after thing after thing, and gotten to it so much with Dr. Rand Paul. So here is one of their exchanges.
Let me finish. You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans. Right. You're saying it's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals, and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's send Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a
if
minute.
It did
I
come
can-
from the lab, but all
You-
the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee
resent,
will allow the witness to
I
respond.
totally resent the lie that you are now propagating.
Yeah, so they had quite a few nasty exchanges between the two about that, and that's probably about the nastiest he got. They did have some heated ones over a mask, and Fauci said it's not theater, and Rand Paul accused him of you're vaccinated. I like and Rand Paul's like, I've had like why are you wearing a mask? And like this is theater, and he resented that it was theater. And not too long after that, he was on when they announced that you could not wear masks when Biden had just decided that I don't know for poll number reasons or something. Magically, like, hey, you can take off the mask. Fauci was on TV like, hey, I didn't want to do it before, but now it's cool because because he didn't want people to see him without the mask and think it was okay not to wear one, even though he didn't need it. So they were just all over the place with the pandemic, and there's no reason why Fauci should still be like the authority on all of these things. But Jen Psaki said when she was asked, can you see any reason why White House might get rid of Fauci? And she said no. I'm like, I understand why you don't want the press to entertain the press with that kind of nugget. But really, no, never. Like there's no fathomable way that you would just get rid of Fauci, even though he's lied repeatedly. What about his price tag? I mean, he's like the highest paid like federal employee. But anyway, there was some documents that came out some time ago that I believe it was the Intercept we talked about on the show, that it was like a 900-page FOIA request that let it be known that there was a tie to the NIH ID, which they did. It's funny because Fauci is in that agency, but they did not even mention Fauci in the article. And Glenn Greenwald, who was a part of that group before, but he ended up leaving over, well, we'll say creative differences, but they didn't like how he would criticize Biden. So he left his own thing that he started. He said he would bet money that the reason why they even did the FOIA request was because of a heated exchange, this heated exchange with Rand Paul and Fauci, and they were probably trying to prove them wrong because they already did an article like trashing Rand Paul in the past. So they probably put in a FOIA request to probably vindicate Fauci. Now that's a theory. It's probably a good theory. But the point is that stuff came out, and yes, it seems like the lab leak theory was always legitimate. They even had concerns where they were like taking it and testing on mice and making it more transmutable to humans. And the people were concerned about people being bitten and all sorts of things. So it was a very interesting article within the Intercept in their findings. And so maybe things are leaking out more and more because it's pretty inevitable that maybe this information, there's going to be this big more information dump. But people were talking about it. I even saw Don Lemon talking about it. I mean, it's a thing. But Fox News reporting, despite repeated denials by the NIAID director Anthony Fauci that his agency used American taxpayer money to fund Chinese gain-of-function research on bats infected with coronaviruses, the National Institutes of Health, which oversees the organization, admitted in a letter to House Oversight Committee ranking member James Comer that a limited experiment was indeed conducted. Dun, dun, dun. So Rand Paul joined Fox News Primetime to react to the bombshell, as well as reflect on the often viral sparring with Fauci during the Senate hearings on the matter. And so Rand Paul's been like, I told you so. And I told you so can't even really cover it. And thank God for Rand Paul for being like a dog with a bone. But he said 5 million people died from a virus that came out of a lab. Wouldn't we want to know? Wouldn't we want to prevent this from happening again? This virus is very deadly. What if we had a virus that had a 15% mortality rate? So yeah, that's true too. What if this virus, what if it was more deadly that they messed with, tinkered with, and created, and it got out and more people will die? We have a very, very, very tiny mortality rate with coronavirus. Very tiny. And yet many people have died, at least whether it's because they're up in age or have some kind of comorbidity or whatnot. But a lot of people have died with it in their systems at least. So what would have happened if this was a legitimately more dangerous virus? And it's crazy. I still see so many people arguing about how many people died under Trump, and they try to pin every single COVID death on Trump. And when people do that, I always question, like, why would you do that when you know that there's particular Democrats that had policies that put our vulnerable in the most vulnerable situations where they would expose COVID patients and they put them in nursing homes? So we know Andrew Cuomo did that. He had a big scandal. I would say that's the real reason why other stuff got leaked about his sexual assault allegations, and he ended up stepping down because they didn't want that coming out. So he's gone now, and now another wackadoodle is in charge of the state. I'm like, oh, first woman, but she's worse. Yay! Like, but what do they care? And I think the reason why he stepped down is because it took heat off of other Democrats who did the same thing. So we still want accountability for this nursing home scandal that happened in New York, and they said that they were going to be pretty fast in getting all this information out, but it's been pretty slow in my opinion. But we know in Michigan, in California, and I think New Jersey, and maybe somewhere else, I think there's another state where they put our vulnerable situations. Now everyone else, like in Ron DeSantis and other like governors, were like, that's stupid. Why if the elderly are the most vulnerable, which we've known for like forever, why would you expose them? So if people want to blame Trump it's hysterical to blame him for every single COVID death. But if you're going to actually assign blame to people, like, why not assign blame to people who actually had really bad policies that put the most vulnerable in harm's way? It's not because people want some sort of accountability. People just really wanted a club to beat Trump over with. And to take a line from Ben Shapiro, like they're standing on the graves of these people to make a point, which Ben Shapiro said that to Piers Morgan when they got into gun debates, and he'd always talk about Sandy Hook's victims to rag on Americans having guns. And it's interesting if you hear him tell that story, because he says that they actually had like injured children that they were going to roll out or had in the front row or something. And so after Ben right out the gate said, Piers Morgan, you stand on the graves of children, he's like, how dare you? He's like, you do it all the time, Piers. He's like, I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it. He's like, I know you've never read a Constitution, so I brought this for you. And so he was so mad. But because he like did that tactic, they couldn't like pan the camera to the kids. So they have their tactics, but I feel that's what people did with COVID, and it worked, right? So many people blame Trump, and they still blame Trump. But you have more people dying of this year who died the year before. At least that's what the headlines say. But you don't hear too many people going out and blaming Biden for the situation now, do you? Because they just wanted to blame Trump. Did he do everything perfect with the pandemic? No. But the media was the one, they tried to blame Trump's lack of credibility for people going out there dying. But the media was the one who said Trump told people to drink bleach. Didn't happen. Like, literally didn't happen. It's a literal lie. It's a lie. They're the ones who kept talking about Trump not wearing masks. And like, if he's tested all the time, the purpose, oh my gosh, guys, this is so crazy. They said the purpose of the mask, which don't work, by the way. There's a Biden dude who said it didn't work. The masks that we wear, the cloth ones, if you get the surgical mask, it clearly says in the box that they do not protect you from coronavirus. If you get the N95, maybe, you're talking a different story. But anyway, but cloth masks are pretty much what you see Biden and them wearing all the time. I assume they have N95s and stuff too, but they're vaccinated, so what does it even matter? It shouldn't matter, right? But anyway, Trump wasn't going around wearing masks most of the time, but they claimed, at least I can't confirm this, but they claimed that Trump was tested all the time. So they said that the masks don't stop you from getting COVID. They just stop you from spreading it, is what they say. So all these people who super virtue signal, like, you gotta wear your mask, you gotta wear your mask, you're only protecting someone if you have the virus. The only good purpose for them is if you actually have the coronavirus. And if you actually have the coronavirus, then why are you outside? Now, the simple answer to that question is you may not know that you have it. But you're not going to always have it forever. So where do you start weighing the risks versus the rewards? When do you start doing that? So we live in a super crazy time, but COVID is still a political tool. I did a video the other day on TikTok. I forget what brought it on. I guess I talked about on the show how the CDC is saying even if your children are vaccinated, because they're going to make it FDA approved for kids 5 to 11. So they're saying that even if your kids are vaccinated, granted, these kids are already pretty much safe from COVID, that they still have to mask in schools. So I just did a screenshot of a tweet about it. And I had the Lamb Chop song. This is a song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. Some people started singing and not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because. And the song repeats, which TikTok just loops. So it was appropriate. That's where I ended it. And then people got mad at me. A few people got mad at me. It's like, oh, you don't know anything about masks and you want people to die. And they said, you're against abortion, but you won't wear the mask. I'm just like, abortion is deliberately killing children. Your kids are safe from COVID. So I showed this graph that I had showed you guys before. I'm not sure if I have it ready to geared up to go. I do. So this graph right here talking about how COVID affects children and the dangers that it has. This information is from the CDC. Suffocation is on par with COVID. There's like no risk for your kids of dying of COVID. It's a thing. It can happen, especially if they have, not even especially so much, but it's possible if they have pre-existing conditions. But it's extraordinarily rare. The number is very small for these groups. It might be, I think maybe one might have been like 63, maybe 1 to 4, and then 5 to 14 might have been like 173. Maybe the numbers are somewhere around there. So we're talking about the whole U.S. from the start of the pandemic. So those are the numbers. So. I mean, you're pretty much more likely your kid to get in an accident taking them to school, but you still do it every day, don't you? Or maybe the bus does. So you hand them off to a stranger and tell them to take them to school. And you still do that. And you're not concerned about that. You're concerned about the masks. And it's still crazy because they're mad at me because I'm pointing out the craziness, and they're saying I want people to die. I'm like, but your kids are basically safe from the COVID, and you're saying even after they're vaccinated, they still have to mask? What sense does that make? What sense does that make? It's just really bizarre. So anyway, Dr. Fauci has lied about a lot of things, been dishonest about some things, come out and said he's been dishonest about things to the American people, yet he still has a job. It's really crazy. I appreciate Rand Paul still pushing and getting the right information out. And I don't know if they're gonna hold him in contempt or prosecute him for lying, under oath or whatnot. I don't know if you can, unless they really tie him to the gain of function research in the leaks and stuff. Because some people are like, Fauci needs to go to jail. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not terribly optimistic about things like that. I'm just not. But people do need to be held accountable, and definitely people aren't going to be held accountable if Republicans don't win in 2022. So people need to really work hard to make sure that that is what happens. So last thing I want to talk about before I close out the show is there's a show on Netflix called You. It's very popular, and there's been a lot of people who've been angry. At least I've heard why. I've seen clips of like this season or whatever what people were angry about, and I just thought I would comment because I don't know, there seems to be conservatives or people against the COVID vaccine that are like the show's being ruined because it's too political now, or politics ruins things. If they were excited to see this show about this stalker slash serial killer, and who he was obsessed with this girl who also turned out to be a serial killer, and now they have a baby and they're taking care of their baby. I don't know what the premise is beyond that with this season, but people were so up in arms about this season because at least conservatives complaining about it because their baby got sick with they came down with something that you shouldn't be able to get because of vaccines, and so they believe that they got it from a child who is the parent, a child and their parent is an anti-vaxxer. So the crazy woman, the mother, ends up hunting down the anti-vaxxer dad and just gets angry, and they harass him, and I think they kidnap him, and they end up killing him. So the last video, I saw a couple of videos of people talking about it, and one person said, oh, Netflix is telling people that it's okay to assault people, you know, who are anti-vax, or this is the things that they want to do or whatever. And I don't know. I don't know if it's that deep. It could very well be that these writers are writing this out and this is their sick fantasy. That is true. It could also be that they realize that the aggression is a bit ridiculous and they are doing kind of a wink and a nod to it. And it could be that they're doing both at the same time. What I don't understand is why are people so pressed about, I mean, these guys, they're both serial killers, right? And they both have big problems mentally. And wouldn't, and the flip side be like, these people who are so against the mandates and stuff are the ones who are crazy enough to kill? Like, couldn't that just be like the message that people want to take away? I don't understand people being so offended that these crazy mass murderers are mad at anti-vaxxers. And I mean, I understand the timing of it is suspect, obviously. And they probably included this storyline because of the politics of today and the pandemic, because so many shows related episodes and storylines to the pandemic. I wish people wouldn't have, because people want to escape, and maybe that's the thing that bothers people because they're really trying to escape. But prior to COVID, this has been a discussion. I mean, when I was doing stuff within politics, people would ask, like my sister was running for chair, and we had a sector, people were asking like, but how do you feel about forced vaccination? People are still very intense about it. And it's the thing I guess I would be annoyed about, really, if I had seen this, is that, and not even annoyed, but just recognize the fact that there are people who are against vaccinations who are not on the right. There's people who are on the left about it, who live in Hollywood in the areas and stuff. I don't know where they're living in this season of the show, but I know Lux is like LA, you know, kind of stuff. She's from a rich, very privileged, elitist sort of family. Her friends are, you know, they're LGBT, they're queer. I think two of them were lesbians, and they talked very sort of pretentious left-wing lingo and stuff. So people getting upset as if this is new politics, like this is a surprise. Well, you should have been surprised the season before. Like, this shouldn't be new information, because this person was a leftist before, and now they're a leftist who wants to protect their child. So I I don't understand the controversy. Well, let me phrase that. I understand the controversy. I just don't think it's rational. I don't think it's rational. I don't think it's fair to be like, oh, Netflix they just want to do the story because they want to show that it's okay to kill conservatives, kill anti-vaxxers. Like, I really don't think that is the message that they are teaching. And it's just wrong to kill people anyway. And all these people are watching it. So I just don't see the obsession with people being obsessed with this particular storyline. So like I saw someone did a trend and it was like shows that got ruined by wokeness. And this was the first one that they mentioned. And I'm just like, the show already had elements of wokeness, didn't it? So and I don't really think the main character, Joe, was really so woke, but he, and there were things that he really disliked about LA and other stuff like that, but he obviously wanted this girl, so he inducted himself into her world. So I don't know, conservatives don't need to be so, the left complains a lot. We don't need to complain about everything too, but that's just my opinion. Now there's some other shows that are super woke, and the shows that became they're maybe moderately woke and they became super woke, especially after like George Floyd died and COVID and other stuff like that. I like don't watch TV basically now. And there are shows that got worse over time. I like Blacklist had some crazy episodes. I don't watch that show anymore. And there are other like plot threads that I didn't like either, but there were some that were just so crazy and out there. There's some shows people were complaining about got so woke, like New Amsterdam, but I'm like, that show started woke. That show started woke. So you got to understand what you're watching. You got to understand what you're watching. We've repeatedly talked about this, but you have to find new things to support and really, really go out there and support them and try to uplift them. And maybe Trump's platform, when he has some non-woke stuff, hopefully it's not too sort of preachy. And it's generally just a good story that can, that we can go back to just watching and enjoying some TV. So I was really happy to hear that President Trump is not just doing a platform and not just kind of building a cloud-based system. So, Google or you can't just shut them down. But I was glad to hear that they're going to have a streaming service too. So I hope that all works out. His stock, he has his own stock, and people are talking to us like, I'm getting some, and it went up, pretty good. So I wish him the best, and the Daily Wire and so on, and hopefully, I will be on that train producing content, making sort of content like that. You guys know that I write, but I would like to see it developed in a sort of, well, I said animation, but we'll see. We'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I want to encourage you guys to please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I've written. If you would like to support blacktnews.com, go to blacktnews.com/donate. Consider leaving a donation for the show. If you enjoy the content and you want it to continue, I'd really, really appreciate that. Make sure that you guys check out the store. Got the goat hoodies. Got the You Are Not the Victim I'm Looking For. I do have books. This is my nonfiction book, Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. It's available on Amazon. I do also have like nonfiction books and stuff like that. You guys can check that out as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.